what happens. I don't know if we're actually going to
I was going to say, obviously,
I need to check.
I can't see anything.
Hold on.
Oh, dear.
I'm going to check for us. Just because it's the first time. Yeah, I think so. Are we here, people?
Hello?
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Hello. If you're expecting any level of professional capability out of us, don't. If the thumbnail made you think this is going to be really serious, probably not. But yeah, hi. Who have we got? I don't know who half these people are. I'm assuming you probably have a better idea than me.
Yeah, I know a few of them. So Tasha is obviously Tasha, and then
Yeah,
Alex is my brother, and then Skaz Dan is Skaz Peter, I think.
Well,
I don't know why his name's Dan.
I don't even know how to see how many people we've got in here, to be honest.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, hi all. If you don't know us, I guess we're basically going to spend it doing a little bit of an intro to ourselves and explain who we are and why it might be worth listening to us at some point. I assume most of you know Chris more than me because I've never posted my face anywhere before in my life, except if you know me from some other podcasts. But here we are, and we're going to try and give this a go and see how it turns up, and hopefully it'll be interesting, to be honest with you. Yeah, for the most part. So generally, we thought that we might just give a little bit of background to how we got started, and then see where we go from there, and kind of what it looked like, our last year looked like, and what we learned, and what we're going to take going forward, to be honest with you. So, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first, mate. I'll settle in.
So I've been full-time probably, a year and a half now? Maybe coming up 2 years, I'm not sure. I started because my girlfriend at the time wanted to go to car boots. And when I was younger, I used to go to car boots and sell stuff at school. And I used to buy stink bombs and you know the little snapping things that you throw on the ground and they pop. I don't know if I've even told you this. That's what I used to buy at the car boot, and I used to sell them at school and cause all sorts of havoc. And that lasted until one of the girls in the school stole the stuff out my bag, and then she just let off a load, and they came and got me and stole all my money. The school took I earned 60 quid that day, which was massive back then. And they took it all. Until this day, I've never forgiven them, to be honest with you. But I used to go to car boots in the morning, and then she suggested going to one weekend, and I was like, yeah, I'm down. And I didn't care to pick up anything for myself. I don't know about you for the most part, but I don't know if you've ever gone to the car boot and wanted to pick stuff up for yourself. But I never wanted anything for myself. But I was really interested in the idea that there was treasure hidden about, that there was stuff that people weren't looking at that was worth money. And so then I went home, and I do this all the time, which is go down a YouTube rabbit hole. And I was watching everyone for the beginning. I can't remember who I first came across. It was Rummage Around, John Luke, Ricky, The Luxury Pickers, ABL Reselling, Bold Finds, of course, if he's in here. And then I went on a massive rabbit hole for that. Started off very slowly to see how it went. And then got up going a bit, was listing 5 a day for a while, picking up some absolute shit at points before I knew anything about anything. I was an everything seller to start with. And then eventually we worked our way here. And the last year we've been going pretty solid as a clothing seller. And it went pretty well, to be honest with you. Now we're here and hoping to do better things. So, yeah.
Smashing it.
What you got?
So I actually started what piqued my interest in the whole trading side was I used to play FIFA Ultimate Team, and used to be able to buy players with coins, but EA would actually tax you 5% on any sale. So it's very similar to eBay in that regard. So if you were buying, so I used to set up filters and stuff like you do on Vinted when you're trying to snipe on Vinted and you're setting up your little filters. I would set up filters on FIFA that would potentially pick up 2 players that you'd want to buy. So you'd have to be smart with your filters, and then you just insta buy anything that popped up. And then I was selling those for a profit, and then EA would take their 5% tax and stuff like that. And that was
You've been getting scammed for years.
Years, mate. So that was like my first introduction to like trading and stuff. And then I was doing that for a little while. I really enjoyed that actually. And then I kind of like fell off out of love with FIFA, as everybody does. And then I was working as a delivery driver manager, like type vibe. And I had a camera because I was into photography, and I sold my camera for like 300 quid. And then I sold that for 300 quid on January the 1st. And then I invested that £300 into reselling after I watched one Chatty Pete video. I watched one Chatty Pete video, and then I'm not even joking, right? I remember Instagram messaging or putting on my story saying Chatty Pete completed it, mate, with his YouTube channel. And it was just a video of every single video he'd ever posted. You know, the little red bar that goes all the way across. Every single one. Every video.
Straight off the rip.
Yeah, and then so I first started out like clothing and stuff like that, and then I was doing it on top of my like work job originally. So I was doing it like part time. I did it part time for about 6 to 8 months, and I was like, I'm done with this like job malarkey. Let's go into reselling, baby. And I've been doing that since for about a year and a half, maybe nearly. It'll be 2 years in July. And
what was your actual last straw? What was your last straw before you left work?
Oh, so my actual last straw in terms of like what made me leave.
Yeah, like before you went like,
I was working
donuts to dollars.
So I was working for a donut company delivering, and my route was I would leave here at like 4 a.m. and I drive to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in North London. For context, that's around a 3 hour and 40-minute drive for me, from basically from where I'm based. And then I used to go from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to Chelsea football ground, and then from there to Surrey Uni, which is obviously your ends, and then from there over to Gloucester, and then back up again. So those days used to take maybe 14, 15 hours. And now obviously I used to sprinkle a few charity shops in and around it, so it might take 16 hours, but I was the manager, it was okay. And anyway, what happened was we'd had a spate of like mix-ups with drivers and stuff like that, and I believed as a manager, I was a people person. So I was going to the drivers like, what do you want changing? What do you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. I will work for you. And I went to go and see the boss that owned the company. And he turned around to me and said, no. To everything I'd ever suggested, I said, like, get like a board up that get like, you can just get ideas for people and all this sorts of stuff. And everything I tried as a manager just got shut down with a no, doesn't work. And unfortunately, this time I was reselling and doing relatively well, like part-time. And what happened was he was explaining to me that he was breaking even like every year, and he had done for 2 years, but was then turning down my opinions and ideas, which is fine. It's his company, he can do what he wants. But that to me was like, oh, you're just not even willing to look at anything else. And that was kind of where I went, nah, it's not, I'm not about it. So I started reducing my hours down, and then I went back to just being a driver. And then I gradually just moved out of there. I would say probably about 6 months earlier than I should have done. But it was also the best decision I ever made, because one thing when you transition from part-time to full-time in eBay specifically is that everyone says, oh, you need to have this and you need to have that. You need to have your 6 months worth of expenses and all that. And my opinion is you don't. And the reason for that is genuinely because if you do, there is too much of a laid back attitude of, oh, I can half-ass this for the next few months because my bills are paid. And when I left my job to go into reselling full time, I'm not even joking. I had £0. I had nothing, and it made me go hell for leather, and I've been doing so ever since.
That's interesting because Chuggles, I don't know if Chuggles is in here, to be fair. There you go. That perfect time he just rocked up. We talked about when we were out the other day that I feel like with this, because the income's really, really unpredictable, like, for example, especially when you're starting and you don't know what you're doing, that having a net to fall onto is probably a really smart idea. But you're like, no, I would rather either go out trying.
For me, right, it was the job that I was in, I was unhappy in. So if I tried and failed, I would go back to another job I was unhappy in. So it is literally the trade-off was I would be in exactly the same place I was before. So also, by the way, just as a side note, Tasha had referenced it there, but my younger brother worked for me at that company and I had to fire him. So that was always like that was a little stressful as well. And just
Is he in here?
yeah,
Is he in here to fire
he was
shots?
earlier, yeah. But so yeah, I had to fire my own brother at that company, which was also a little bit stressful. So, but yeah, there he is laughing. But yeah, so that whole job was a bit of a rigmarole. But yeah, I personally think, at least my mentality was, if I've got nothing to fall back on, then I am.
Yeah, okay, you're saying that, but Tasha's here saying that she was still working anyway. So if you had, she was literally carrying.
So she was part-time at the company I was at. So she worked for me. I was her boss at the other job, right? And she was working part-time. And let's be real, between July when I left and February the next year, that's the only time, that's the length of time she had to work without me there. And then in the February we brought her on full-time doing this. So there was a 8-month period where she was working part-time there, and then the hours started getting diminished for whatever reason at that company. And then
How long have you been going for now? As in reselling?
20, I think it was 2020. It was 2023. Yeah, 2023.
I think that's about the same, to be honest with you.
It was after COVID. I didn't get the COVID bounce with the Wii's. I remember James Boldfines telling me that he was selling Wii bundles for like 90 quid or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, mate, not in a million years now. What are they, like 30 quid?
They were loving life out there because everyone was online.
I didn't get the hype.
And then obviously, so first, do you remember what you did first year?
I actually, so the first part of the year between when I left my job and the end of the year, I think we did 30, and then the next segment we were doing 50, and then the goal was 80 after that, when I hit full time. And then what ended up happening is we went way past 8, because so my goal was to hit 79,999, right, straight underneath the VAT before it got moved up or whatever. And then we got there really, really quickly in the year. And then I just said, let's just blast through. And I think we finished on 113,000, I think, in the end.
Nice. I don't remember what I did my first year. My first year was like minuscule because I was doing my tax for that and it was literally nothing because I was dossing about for the most part. And that's before. And then last year, I obviously just did my tax return for 2023, 2024. And it was like 50, I think. And then obviously last year I managed to squeeze out, actually I've got to pick out the number here, 104. So we just about hit the mark last year, even though we weren't really aiming for it. But it's interesting you had a plan as to not go past the threshold and then just kind of decided to go way past it, because I didn't have that at all.
So yeah, the threshold was actually being hit around, I want to say like 12 months after I started. So it was around the July mark and we were hitting that threshold and I had a decision to make. Was it turn everything off and just wait, or just go to town on it? And I actually turned it off for like 2 weeks, like went right down. And then I think it was about a month later, my accountant messaged me and was like, you're pretty close anyway at this point.
Was that why so when you knocked it off in December and stuff, was that you trying to avoid it?
Yeah. So I turned it fully off for a little bit, to try and avoid it. And my accountant was like, look, at this point you're too far gone, essentially. So we just went hell for leather. And we've had different iterations of that. Like we were doing 10 a day, then 15. We did 20 a day a little bit for last year. Like last year for about 2 weeks, we did 20 a day. Realized we could cope with that. It was more the source inside that slowed us a little bit with that. Went back down to 10 for a couple of weeks and then pushed it back up to 20 for the start of this year.
I didn't realize you turned it off just to try and avoid that, because you said multiple times about the fact that in December you listed like nothing, and I didn't realize that was because I thought you were just being lazy.
I mean, there was an element to it for sure. Like I decided I'd had enough, but it was literally just trying to slow everything down, which unfortunately just didn't happen.
That's interesting. All right, okay then. So with that, like, what I thought would be interesting is what the most important things you learn are in being able to do 100K? Because obviously we put it in the title and stuff, and I feel like we have to deliver some value on it instead of just waffle for about who we are for an hour or so. But in terms of lessons learned from doing 100K last year and how you got there, obviously you might not have thought about it too hard, but what were the things that you think led you to be able to hit it?
So for me personally, I think there's two massive ones. One is consistency, and that is across the board. So the one thing that people can be consistent with is they can, like, I'm going to be a 10 a day lister, or I'm going to be a 15 a day lister, and they're not consistent with the things that surround that goal, and that's the biggest issue. So for instance, we've gone up to 20 this year, and the consistency has to be, I'm on Vinted everyday sniping. I'm at charity shops for every waking hour of every waking day until they finish 9 to 5 every day that I can be there. Any car boots or jumbo trails pop up, I'm there, no non-negotiable. And then obviously, you've got to making sure that you're getting your items set up and ready to go, picturing on time, just doing everything. Like my listings go live at 7 a.m. every single morning. No rhyme or reason other than I wake up, I get everything done, and then listing. So for me, consistency across the board, it doesn't matter what it is. I think that is one of the biggest, and if not the most important thing. Because
I would 100% agree, to be honest with you. Even though my consistency looks very different to your consistency for the most part. Like my listings go up whenever they're done for that day, but as long as I'm not going to sleep before they're done for the most part. And I think it makes it really simple, right? I think it makes it all really simple. Like I said, I didn't think too much about trying to go for the 100K mark, but it just kind of worked out that way from the consistency of doing that every day. And obviously you'd have to learn a lot along the way, but that I'd say consistency as well is the main thing. Like obviously there's all the information and knowledge about not buying bad stuff and picking up stock and figuring that out. But if you just keep it consistent, I feel like you get there eventually. Regardless.
And even that is down to consistency, right? Like consistently researching brands, consistently when you're outsourcing, if you don't know an item, you research it. Everything is consistency. You've just got to have the dedication and understanding that if you don't do things regularly, then you're not going to get a regular outcome. I spoke about this actually a few months back on Instagram, and excuse me, Hanley was posting her daily totals, right? Like I think at that point it might have been like £1,800 a day.
Yeah, making everyone feel bad. I remember.
Yeah, when she was making everyone cry. Yeah, I remember. But she was putting those up daily. And I mean, I've said this loads of times, but I've spoken to Hanley in depth because I was comparing myself to a lot of people, and Hanley was one of the people I was comparing myself to. And we are incomparable. Like her site, in terms of store size, it is incomparable. In terms of work, it's incomparable. All these things, right? And what she said to me was, you can't compare me to you because we run completely different businesses. We source completely differently. And one thing that really resonated with me that we discussed was that her stock is, although it's just like car parts and it can be like super, super sporadic, a lot of the time she gets a lot of the same items. She's getting bulk buys of a lot of like the same parts and stuff. How can I expect my sales to be consistent and the exact same when I don't source the exact same items? I'm not. If I was selling just women's dresses, then I would be able to predict exactly where I was going to be every.
Do you think?
I think so. Yeah. I do think so. I think
Hanley especially, that's interesting because she had, like you say, she gets a lot of the same parts. She gets, well, from what I understand, she doesn't know exactly what she's getting every time. Like she's going to dealerships, rocking up and pulling out whatever's there, and then sorting into what she likes and doesn't like. But I think because like even if you did dresses all year, right? There's so many different versions of a dress. Like say Hanley only did carburetors. I don't even know if she does carburetors for the most part. There's so many different car carburetors that people are going to need at different times. Like you definitely have an idea. For example, you could say dresses in summer are going to be worse. They're going to be better, and in winter they're going to be worse. But I still think even within that, there's so much variation.
Yeah, I think there's definitely variation, right? But I think there's variation in everything. I just mean that there's probably less variation, or at least to some degree. But realistically, for me, like I'm picking up men's clothing, I'm picking up women's clothing, I'm picking up jeans, trousers, dresses. I'm picking up footwear, both sexes. I'm picking up cameras again.
Yeah.
I'm all about the cameras because they just sell really good money. Like, do you know what I mean? So, and yesterday, for instance, for me, from a sales perspective, was pretty average all the way through. And then I sold one pair of Dr. Martin boots for £150. And then I'm like, although the number of sales isn't quite what I want, the value is there. So I relax about how many sales. We've discussed it before about whether you want sales or number of items like on a more consistent basis. But just having that £150 sale was like, yeah, I can relax. I'm chilling. Yesterday was okay in the end.
Yeah, the number makes you feel better, but I'm never happy about it. I actually, sometimes I despise them because I look at a large sale and I'm like, you're making me feel like I'm okay. And I'm not okay. Like if I sell one thing that day and it's like 200 quid, right? And or a few things, right? 200, and then you got a few like £20 things. I feel like, okay, today's been okay. When it hasn't been, I'm not happy about that day. It's just disguising my pain. And I don't like them. I'm like, because then I look at an inflated number and I'm like, no, that's not what's really happening right now. And that, I guess that's again, but going back to the consistency of stock type thing, it's interesting because I think if you do what we do long enough, so even if you pick up all sorts of things long enough, you should be able, like, you're not picking up massively different stuff. So you're picking up clothes, you're picking up a variation. The balance is kind of the same all the time. You don't skew one way super hard and then skew the other way super hard, like to men's or to women's or to footwear or to cameras. So over time, even though Hanley has like standard car parts and stuff like that. Also, I forgot to start this by calling out the other podcasts that we're going to be better than. That goes for Bold Clubber. That goes for the Business and Banter podcast. They're both going to go in the bin.
Also, just aside that the luxury pickers are here, and our podcast is going to be better than theirs because we are actually going to release podcasts, unlike Beth and Austin.
Yeah, we're here to cause all sorts of beef with everyone, preferably, and anyone that wants to smoke can get it. But yeah, you think if you do what we do long enough over time, like you'd be able to predict it reasonably well, or you should do anyway.
What I will say is I am starting to notice that the numbers are starting to even out a little bit. So although I did just say that like I could predict it more if I was selling, I am realizing now that my daily sales are getting very similar. And maybe that's just because I'm staying way more consistent with the quality of what I'm listing, right? So sometimes back in my heyday, I was a little bit more lax with what I'm picking up. And so sometimes I would go, that's cheap enough, 2 into 15, right? I'd be like, oh, that's cheap enough. But the sell-through wasn't there to match that I needed the speedy return on that poor investment, right? Whereas now if I'm doing a 2 into 18 or something like that, I'm making sure that it's going to sell within 2 weeks and it's just a quick in and out, extra 10 quid profit, and I'm good to go. And I'm happy with those on a more regular basis now, based on the fact that my experience is that if it sells through quickly, then it's less of an inconvenience.
And I when you started and when you look back at that and you said you're picking up rubbish or whatever, like, what were you doing to decide whether or not to pick something up?
Zero. So when I first started, mate, Chaddy Pete is obviously my guy that I started with, and he always used to say it was building up the no bank. So when you're in a charity shop or you're outsourcing in any way, shape, or form, you would look for a rail. Let's just say clothing. You would look for a rail, and you would go no, not sure or yes, right? And that was kind of the thing. But I didn't do that when I first started. It was oh, this isn't Tesco's, this looks nice, cool, I might pick it up. And then obviously as I matured in what we were doing, I started to do the no thing. That was, and I still do that today. Like my method is his method. It is no until I see something that I either know 100%. Like I do really well with Portuguese flannel shirts, right? And if they're less than £5, I know I'm picking them up because they sell for 30 to 35 and relatively quickly. So that is an instant yes for me without doing the comps, because I know that is going to sell for that. And then anything that is a maybe, I just, then I'll pull it aside and I'll whip through. And then at the end, I do the research on the stuff that I don't know, and then hope that research then either develops it into a no or a yes.
So that's the same as what I said all the time, is like, the way I've learned stuff and how you get fashion shops, just knowing what not to buy. Like, And you get better and better at knowing what not to buy. And then obviously the more you know the yeses, and if you know if you can pick them up for whatever price point, fantastic. But like you're going to avoid 90% of problems if you just know what not to buy, and then give the time to things that you like you said you haven't seen or whatever. So you said you looked at nothing, right? I'm trying to think. I had an idea to look at comps originally, and originally I was just looking if it's sold for money, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd go to the car boot sale, I'd look it up on the comps, and if it's sold for money, that's a win. If there was sold for money or a few sold for money, I'm like, yes, good item. And then I can't remember. I think it was probably the daily refinement, like originally, like when I got onto him, that he talked about sell through rate, and I was like, oh, cool. And then I was looking at like 50% sell through rate, and that was like then my new margin, and I didn't realize how slow that actually was. I was like, oh, if there's half the items sold for half the items listed, that's good. Like we like that. And that was not good, because then I didn't check what the app, like I just look at the brand of whatever it was and then check the sell through rate, and if it was 50% above and it had decent money on it, it was good to go. And I picked up so much bad stuff by not checking anything. And then once you figure out like what an actual good sell through rate is, it just makes such a world of difference in my opinion.
And you're very good at going like niching right into the solds as well, and like looking at colors and sizes sometimes, and maybe like sometimes for me, if I see like it's a bit more like obvious, but say like an Arc'teryx jacket, you know it's going to be like worth a few quid or whatever. But sometimes you can look at those items and go, oh yeah, that's a really good item with a really good sell through. But if you look at the soft shell versus like a fleece, like Burghouse is a good example, right? Burghouse fleeces don't sell for a lot. They're like 14, 15 quid maybe on Vinted if you're really lucky. But like the Gore-Tex stuff is good, and then it's just differentiating what is valuable.
Yeah, I differentiate nothing. I differentiate nothing. I type in.
That's how I was when I started
something
as well.
Jacket, and then if it was available, if it was there and there was stuff sold, I'm like, sweet, that's a win. And now, obviously, like you said, I don't have to go in too deep nowadays. Like I actually feel like it's easier. Like you don't have to see, like once you kind of get a pattern recognition for it, you can scan through the solds, and depending on what you've got in your hand or what you've got in front of you, you can kind of look at it. And obviously it's easier if you're not in a clothing niche, right? Like if you've got cameras, then it's really easy, because then you're like, what model is this? Okay, perfect. This has got 100% sell through. It says for 150 quid. Fantastic. Obviously, The other problem you have with that, though, is like testing it, all that sort of stuff, which is a completely different problem. But I think it makes it really easy. But whereas with clothes and like Handy's car parts, right? She just types in a part number and she's like, yeah, I got this. And Arwen said it one day as well, that like he's really grateful to be listing shoes in terms of title structure, because he just whacks in the code into he probably knows them all now anyway, but he whacks in the code to Google. It's got exactly the make and model. It's got the coloring words. It's got everything. He just whacked that into a title. Maybe had to make extra few bits and do it.
And even if you don't have the code as well, most of the time, like I don't think I've ever Google lensed a picture of a trainer and never had the right result. Like, so even if the codes are like a little worn or they're just shoes that don't have them or whatever, it's so easy to find them. Like clothing's very good as well. Like you can Google lens a lot of stuff. There are a lot of brands like Bowden and Hobbs that have got names for their dresses, but they're not on it. So when you Google lens it, you can actually find the names for it anyway, and then you can search eBay.
I rarely ever use Google Lens.
I Google lens so much.
I Google Lens nothing, except for maybe football shirts. That might be the only thing. But even then, if they're like they've got the code, I do the code first. But I Google Lens nothing, because half the time I don't think it's worth. Like there's certain brands where it's really worth putting in the model or whatever. Whereas I feel like a load of brands people just don't care. Like they're not looking for the specific model a lot of the time. And there's some that are on the borderline. But then if it's like a current season thing, then people might be, because they'll look at it on the website and then they'll be like, oh, where can I find this?
Sold out or something like that.
Yeah. But I feel like for older stuff, like people are just browsing and looking for what they like. Which
I think Reese is a little bit like that. So Reese, sometimes you can search the name on Reese, and sometimes nothing comes up whatsoever. And then you type in what it is, like a pair of like wide leg wool trousers or something like that, and you'll see your pair of trousers there, but there's no name on it or anything like that in terms of who's selling it. They're not naming it or anything like that. So I think Reese is very similar to that as well.
So that's interesting because I went to a resale last week, a Reese sample sale, and some stuff. I put the name in for Reese because stuff that has it like on the tag, I feel like people are more likely to search for. You're right there. They're more likely to search for, and that means that it's worth putting in the title, in my opinion. But some of the stuff, if you put the name in, it comes up right away. There's loads sold for it, and if some of it you put none of it, you put it in and nothing comes up and no one cares. So it's interesting.
I think Reese is the most inconsistent for me from what I found. Like sea salt, for instance, sea salt, everybody and their mother puts the name of the sea salt thing in the title, but with Reese it's a little bit more inconsistent. So anyway, that was all off. Just
we got. Where do we start? I think we got to consistency of again.
I actually like my second most important thing. I think is actually just building relationships and understanding how you source. So when I first started, it was just mindlessly. I've said this loads of times to everybody, but I used to just walk around car boots, charity shops with my headphones on. I didn't want to speak to anybody. I'm not a people person. Like I like to be in my own space, in my own time. So I would just whack my headphones on, listen to a podcast or music, and I would walk around car boots and charity shop and speak no words for the entire day. And what I really, really realized over the last maybe 6 to 8 months is just how important it is. I've had great opportunities from speaking to charity shop managers, charity shop staff, car boot people that are like, oh, have you got any more of this? And they're just like, yeah, we've got loads in here, and they just haven't got out the boot yet because there's loads of people rushing around them. And I think that's one of the big things that I've really learned as well, just learning to communicate with people. I used to have this sort of like ill-informed understanding of people that they hated resellers because oh, you're going to buy this item off me for £4 and sell it for 50. But the likelihood is, if it's charity shop car boot related, the people at that car boot are willing to sell it because they don't care about it anymore. If you're taking an item to a car boot, like a general person, not like a trader, they don't want that item anymore. It's gone. It's done. Like they're not asked whether they get £4 for it, £5 for it. They might have a little bit of value in it, but like realistically, they want it gone that day, right? So they're not asked if you're going to buy it off them for 10 and sell it for 30 or 40.
Some of them definitely asked. Some of them are like desperate to hold on for that item, even though they're there to sell it.
Maybe, but like in the grand scheme of things, I think what my point is that I think the more you speak to people, the more you realize you're not the enemy. Because I used to think I was the enemy when I was walking around these places. And what I've actually come to realize, especially charity shop managers, they're a lot more lenient. And actually, I spent like 25 minutes talking to one a couple of weeks ago, and her sister, who lives in Australia, sells books like Mel. It isn't Mel, but like, like books like
crazy.
And in Australia and stuff like that. And I'm just like, do you know what? And she's like, oh, are you guys going to resell? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, she was like, oh, cool. Do you do it on Vinted? And she was really, really interested in whether we were going for Vinted or eBay in terms of selling and stuff like that. So I do think that that's one thing. And I have garnered way more opportunities in the last 6 to 8 months by just being a little bit more vocal about what I do. And what, I'm still really bad at it, but I've been infinitely better than I was. Do you know what I mean?
That's interesting because I still think that there's definitely a hesitancy to like saying you're a reseller, right? Like even if they're not the enemy, like we can solve and help a lot of problems for charity shop owners and other people, right? Like especially anyone that's trying to do business or trying to make money. Generally, we're a very reliable source of income for them. If you get up and going and you talk to them and let you know who are, some people are very against it. Like the amount of times I've heard that charity shops say they get lesser quality stock because people are selling themselves, right? Like, and it's not necessarily dig at resellers, but it's just they probably have a slight, pushback to hearing people selling online because it means that they technically do a little bit worse because everyone's choosing their option over them, and they used to do better than that, and they'll talk about quality of stock going down all the time. But then on the flip side, there's like, if you are going to be consistent and buy from us all the time, then they're going to have way less of a problem because us as resellers, we're not really the people that would take that away from them. Like we're not the people donating to them. We're the people buying from them, which is really, really beneficial. But I think I think that's always a given, and I worked on that from the start, which is interesting. Like I didn't do it deliberately originally, and I've definitely put more of an emphasis over time on like pushing relationships and trying to kind of navigate my way to something that would be better for me. But at the start, I thought I didn't really see the point in hiding it. Like if I'm going to be there every week, I'm sporting an IKEA bag. They're like, this guy doesn't need this many clothes and he's not wearing dresses. Like there was no point hiding it from them or anything like that. And I think it led to better places more than anything. And then eventually when I kind of understood that, I kind of started pushing that way as well. I was like, okay, I can see that these people kind of want to work with me. That means other people probably want to work with me. Maybe if I give them an in or a way that it could work for us, then maybe we can get there. So I think it's really, really beneficial to build that sort of relationship. But I think it also is completely irrelevant. Like if you want to hit, like going back to the main point of hitting 100K, it's completely irrelevant. You actually don't need relationships at all, in my opinion.
And technically, I hit 100K without any of these things. It's only more recently where I'm pushing to go past that is where I've realized that garnering more opportunities by talking to these people is different. Is the way to push even further and higher. I think when you're trying to, for me, it's double. So like I'm trying to double my original last month's like earnings. Like I think that's when you've really got to sort of rely on that. And I think just going back slightly to charity shop managers and disdain, I think I've spoken to a lot of managers now, and pretty much like I go to like 50 or so a week, 60 or so a week, and I talk to pretty much most of their managers now. And a lot of the disdain comes from a lot of people in charity shops that are trying to bargain with them. They don't like people bargaining. And then also like I try to explain this a lot to charity shop managers, like theoretically I am your perfect customer because I don't care about color, I don't care about size for the most part. Maybe you want to go for like slightly bigger sizes or in that medium range or whatever, but I'm not. If there's a size 4.5 pair of shoes and I'm a size 11, I can still pick up those 4.5 shoes, whereas somebody walking can't. You know what I mean? So I always say to them, like, I'm a valuable customer because realistically, I will buy, if it's good, I will buy anything. And I think a lot of the time people might go in there and go, oh, well, actually, you know, I don't want to pay £8 for that. And then go to the till and they're like, oh, would you take £5 for this? And I am absolutely guilty of that, but only in charity shops where I have a very good relationship with the manager and they understand what I do. And I can say to them, look, this for me, this isn't like I can just go, I really like this item, but would you be able to do it for this? And if they turn around and say no, I'll go, yeah, I understand, no drama, and you can move on. Some people might think that that's a bit of an issue. And some people might think that I'm wrong for doing that.
Oh, you're going to get the people that are like just stealing money from charity shops, so on and so forth. But overall, we're making them way more money than we're stealing from them.
And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure. I think the last check I had on my roll in like 12 months, I've spent just shy of 60, maybe 65K in charity shops. I mean, my cost of goods for last month alone was 4,800. So that I've spent
a lot. No, that's gone up.
Well, so if you do my cost of goods at the moment, my average cost of goods at the moment is about £8.74. So if you times that by 20 every single day, and then do that by last month was obviously a 31-day cycle, and on top of that, I'm buying at every possible opportunity, and I've been more heavy on vintage. So all these things are weighing up where I worked out that on an average month, I'll probably spend just shy of 5K every month now for this foreseeable.
Ideally, if it all sells, what does that look like in terms of turnover after that per month?
I mean, I'm not particularly great at maths, but it would be, my average sale price is £32 at the moment. So theoretically, in the perfect 20 in 20 out, it would be 209 or 219,000 a year.
I want to do.
But if you want to do it,
what you say, 32 and
£32 average sale price. And if we can get 20, then that'd be great. But I think actually my average number of orders per day last month was like 15 on average. So if you did that, that would give you roughly what I got anyway.
I don't feel like that maths doesn't make sense. So 20 times 31, right?
Yeah.
So you got 620 listings a month.
Yes.
And then times that, was your cost of goods? £8.
Cost of goods is £8.74 at the minute.
8.74. So that gives you 5.4 a month. Yeah. And then was it 620? Did I say 620?
Yeah, 620. Yeah.
Times 32.
Yeah.
19.8. So yeah,
so
sweet.
You're looking at you're basically looking at a triple up, right? Like on most things, like roughly, which is a great place to be. And again, my average profit is usually around the 15. Now, obviously, as we all know with the averages, sometimes you might make £10 profit, sometimes I might make £70 profit. Like, it's all up in the air, but we work on the fact that, well, at least I've started to work on the averages. I'm not a huge advocate for working on averages. I've been over this quite a few times, but I believe that if you can average your cost of goods, I think it can lead to you picking up items that you might not necessarily pick up if you're doing it based on just profit. So, if, for instance, if you've got a £5, let's just use 5 as a blatant easy number. If you've got a £5 average cost of goods, and then you pay £8 for something that's going to sell for 22 or 20, in terms of your average cost of goods, that's not going to move it much. So realistically, you could say that item cost you £5 and it's going to sell 20.
So I agree.
I'm a big advocate that you should actually just go off individual prices. But this year I'm working off averages just to see how I feel like long term.
I think it's interesting because I think if you go off averages, then you can it actually skews what you pick up, right? Like you said, it skews, and I think it doesn't push you to push the margin as much, and you can end up getting lower and lower quite easily because you're like, oh, my average cost of goods is £5, I can get 20 for this. But if you were looking at it and you wanted 25 every time, then everything's going to start to skew lower. But Hanley probably have a meltdown saying average is pointless. But I just think if you're looking at individual basis and to know you're trying to push it every single time or trying to get as much out of every single time as you can, then realistically your cost of goods is just going to move with you regardless, and that kind of makes sense. But something I do want to get to, which is the only comment I'm going to bring up because I think it's a really good point. I said I wanted to talk about it, but I completely forgot, and we've spoken for 40 minutes already, and I missed half the point. Is I don't know who this is, but it's so true, right? Like it. So they say, why do resellers promote their turnover figures over their profit figures? Turnover is very misleading to new sellers, and that is a massively big point. And I wanted to say last year, even though I did the 100K, I was super excited that I was doing 100K. I was like, I must be earning loads. This is sick. I'm wealthy. I can sort of splash my money however I like. And then I actually did my numbers at the end of the year, which is where actually probably knowing your profit margins and your average cost of goods and sales price is very useful because you get a realistic expectation of what you're actually earning. But I got to the end of the year and I did my numbers. And I was like, damn. this isn't as good as I'd hope. And I know Simon made a video of it, and he just said he's into averaging himself, that he kind of got disheartened as well. And then Hanley came in and said that, you know, that margin's really, really good, or that profit margin is really, really good for most businesses. 100%. But I think eBay numbers are so overinflated. So for example, I did 104, right? But I think I didn't do the exact numbers yet. I'm sure people have. And I came into about 35K profit or take home pre-tax, which is good. Like, it's above average for the UK, which is nice. And obviously the fact I can do it on my own terms and how I want to do it and I enjoy what I do is fantastic. But when you see such a big number and you're like, oh yes, we did 100K, you're like, sure, this is going to be great, right? You're like, I mean, I'm one of the high earners, but no, it's not the case realistically. And it makes you see how much you actually have to push in this to hit like that, the real 100K mark. And I think Simon said it in group wise that he's like, is it really possible to hit 100K profit doing this? Because people say they want to hit 100K all the time, but hitting 100K turnover is so different to hitting 100K profit. Like, I have to 3 times what I do, which isn't like, again, I can do that. Like, I don't have the most strenuous way to do it, but it's no easy feat by any means. And I think you've really got to push to be one of the bigger sellers to be able to hit that 100K mark and really feel good about it.
What I was going to say is I think that people get it twisted and people get it all confused when people are showing their like 90 days and they're doing that. They're not doing it to brag. They're not doing it to say I've made. like 113k realistically, I'm nowhere near 113k in terms of what I'm actually doing. It's just sales. Sales is always completely different to everything else. And I think what happens is I'm proud of the number in terms of the sales. Like, I think when you're looking in sales, people want to show if you sold a company for £1 million and you saw 300 grand of that, right? I wouldn't go, oh, I sold the company for 300 grand. I'd be like, I sold the company for £1 million.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's the bit that's interesting. It's the fun bit. Nobody, like, some people want to know, but like realistically, just to break down Simon's as well, for instance, right? He did 106, was it? I think he did about 106.
Yeah, he beat me by like a K or something.
I think he said it was 33k after fees and everything like that, right? So theoretically, that's about let's just say it's a 30% profit margin on what he's doing, right? Realistically, that 30% is actually probably more like 40 to 42% in terms of actual profit on what he's done. It's just that unfortunately, eBay fees kick in, VAT, that's like 7.5%. Then you've got to pay tax on it, that's 20%. Like, I think the reason people don't go into the numbers really nitty gritty a lot of the time is because it is very, 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 very small. Like, when you really look at it, like 30k for a normal job is 30k is the average now, right? So I think people look at it and go, oh, I did 30k, but 30k is incredible on your own, doing it your way. And I think
I agree. Like,
and I think people don't want to go into it because it's you take 30k from 106, and no matter what way you look at it, it doesn't look good, but it is very good if you understand business and like percentages of profit on most companies is so much smaller than what we're doing.
Yeah.
So Uki, I just want to reference this very quickly. Uki, I don't know who it is, but he said if you're spending 12 to 15 hours a day to achieve 30k, 35k, you might be better off doing a 9 to 5. But my argument to that is I am the happiest I've ever been. I am infinitely happier doing this for 12 to 15 hours a day, because guess what? I could do this for 19 hours a day and it wouldn't feel like work. There are days, obviously, where that is misleading, and maybe I am not feeling it.
I've seen your foul moods. I disagree. You're crappy as shit sometimes.
And exactly, I don't know. Terry Turtle, Chris actually smiles now. Like, people know me. Like, people that really know me understand the struggles I've had in previous jobs and just hating my life, like, period. So I think that what money might not get me, like, personal sort of mental state is more important. And I think if I can hit the same levels of cash, but even in my manager's job, I was earning 25k a year, so I'm earning more now. I have less stress, I don't work for anybody, and I get to do what I want. It just so happens that what I want is to do this. And I think people get it twisted, like, oh, you could do a 9 to 5 and earn 35k. Absolutely, I couldn't. Do you know why? Because I was awful in school. I was an idiot. And most jobs that I would do now would be very much entry level, period.
Yeah, I think that's it. So again, I wasn't dissing off, and loads of people are agreeing with you. Like, it's saying that.
By the way, in no way, shape, or form am I taking your comment in a negative way. I'm just explaining. I'm very passionate about this because of my experiences, and
I agree.
Hatred towards like working a 9 to 5. If you dislike it, people can get stuck in it because they've got a mortgage, they've got kids. Like, you can be stuck in a job you hate, and I'm very, very fortunate that I love what I do and I can earn the same amount. I may have to work longer, but
I think that's the main thing, right? As long as you're literally enjoying it. I think. Do you think you'll feel that way forever? Like, we've discussed this before, but like right now you're really enjoying it because the contrast is massive. But spending, if you're talking like 12 to 15 hours a day, I don't spend 12 to 15 hours a day. And the reason my day takes so long half the time is because I'm completely inefficient. Like, a lot of the time when I'm doing my processes, I take my time to get up in the morning. As I'm going around the charity shops, I'm not like super driving to get through them all. When I come here, I'm taking my time doing photos and stuff. I'll chat to people. I'll enjoy my time as I go along, which is massively important for me. Like, I love doing this job and taking my time doing it. And the reason I've stuck at 10 a day is because it feels very comfortable. And I'm definitely going to push it up, and there's no way I'm going to do that. But the thing with this is, not only are you working for yourself, and that's where we're at now, but you're uncapped. Like,
Literally,
you can push it further, and the profit margins are good. Like 30% is good for a business, but I can get a 30% a pay upgrade this year just by, and it might not even be working harder. You might figure some things out. You might do something a bit differently. You might find a new source. You might find a new relationship. You might narrow down your processes, and you can earn a massive pay increase straight away from just figuring out these few things while still enjoying doing what you're doing, and you're not spending more time than you were previously a lot of the time. Like, that's been my goal this whole time, is to develop this so that I can grow and it not take more time. Because I enjoy how much time it takes now, and obviously you're mostly more motivated than me to really put in the effort and go out early morning and get back late. I don't really want to do that, and that's, you could say that's lazy, but it probably is half the time.
It's working smart or not. We've discussed this before.
Yeah, but you can work smart and hard, right? And like put in more effort. But yeah, I'm really interested in making my time just work the same but make more money from it, and which is what I've trying to do, and it's worked out that way. And that's the amazing thing about all of this is, one, again, we get to do what you don't even have to love it. I don't even say I love it. You say you love it. I don't even love it that much. I like talking to people and I like talking about it, and I like the fact it's a business. It's interesting, but in terms of loving it as a thing, I'm kind of impartial to the whole thing. But in terms of enjoying my time and it like not negatively impacting me and me being able to do it how I want, it's the best thing in the world, because that's really beneficial in so many ways. And again,
I do think that one of the biggest things for me is that my alternative, again. So he said that he understands and there's different reasons for it, but in my opinion, like I said, the only thing for me is an entry level job. Like I was never, like, I'm not academically great, and this is the only thing that I would consider myself decent at, which is probably the reason why I think Tasha said there, like, if he didn't like it, he wouldn't have given up on it ages ago. And that is literally me. Like, I would try something. If I don't like it, I'll leave. And that's always been sort of, I've stuck at a few things, but at a very, very big detriment to my own sort of like thought process and mental state and stuff like that. And I just think if you can have a business that's got zero cap other than time, then you can do anything. And one of the things that I've done, which is completely different to the way you do it, is I'm going to give my all in terms of time, right? I'm giving so much time to this, 12 to 13, 14 hour days, right? And I give my time to it. But when I work out how to not give myself time for it, I'm going to be able to work at those things infinitely better, because I'm looking at it and going, if I'm giving 15-hour days now and I work this out so that I'm more time efficient, then you better believe I'm about to rack it up. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to go next level. So obviously, like, I'm working with charity shops now and doing all these sorts of things, and that means I can push up to 20. But then it only takes like one more communication with another person that has a little bit of stock that you can work with, and then guess what? You can go to 25. And then if you find one more person, you can go to 30.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
the jump is the scalability. Mate, I went from 30 to 50 to aim for 80. So I aimed for 80 from 50 and went from 50 to 113. Like, I know that is only turnover, like, or whatever. Like, I understand all of that, but the level in terms of speed of growth is just unmatched in any other, especially for somebody who's going to be in an entry level job like I am, or I would be. Like, it's so unmatched, it's insane.
I think there's something to be said for, like, there's like, so I came from a marketing background, right? Like, my first business, I kind of had an idea that I didn't want to work for anyone originally, so I kind of set off on the path to try and find something to do. And I went down the marketing rabbit hole of setting up your marketing agency and stuff like that. And that business is crazy. Like, it in terms of profit margins, there's no running cost. There's basically anything. All you do is a client pays you, could be 500, could be £1,000 a month, and you get 8 clients on the board. You're making loads of money. It's fantastic. But this is so simple, right? Like, this is so simple. And I don't know who said it earlier. We've ignored half the comments. You guys have ignored it, and appreciate it. And if anything, we've picked out Uki, who I actually really like the type of questions they ask.
Yeah, the question was great. It was a fantastic question.
and you could say it's a bit of a diggy one in a way. Like you could say like, oh, you guys are talking about turnover. Give us a real example of stuff. But it's a really good point, and I don't think they meant it any way. They just wanted something realistic, and that sort of like mentality I like talking about. Like it gets you thinking and explaining things a bit better. But yeah, this is so simple and easy to instigate. And someone said about routines, Xander, he said it's hard to keep just this. He said it's hard to keep routines from working for yourself, but they pay off massively. I struggled a lot with routine. Even now, like you hear me talking about, like I have a lazier routine. But the thing with this is it has multiple things that keep you in line for the most part, like without thinking about it. So you don't have to, but if you have them as have-tos in your head, then it works out a lot better. So for example, that's something I would say for if you want to do 100K as well, is it having them as have-tos and not, oh, I need to do this. Like I'm doing this regardless is kind of the mentality I have with a lot of things. But yeah, the fact you have to send items every day, the fact you have to take photos every day, the fact you need stock to do all the rest of it, all end up like working into one big cycle and routine. And once you get going on that routine, it's super, super easy to stay on it. And it involves consistency at first. It involves staying a little bit motivated. And that I love about this business. And that has been the most beneficial thing to me in terms of success. Because I've tried a few things, I've been decent at it, and then I've fallen off. But this, I haven't fallen off. It stayed the same. If anything, I've just gotten better and better because it keeps you like in control and in order. And I really appreciate that about this, which is something else I didn't think about really. And I think is an unforeseen benefit to all of this for me that I never would have thought of to start with.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with all of that. In terms of, because obviously I've said consistency and then like building relationships and speaking to things. What are the two things, if any, different? Would be your two takeaways from the 12 months that you've just had, where you've done your 104K. And obviously, what are the two things that have helped you? I know that you didn't necessarily have the goal to hit 100K. It's kind of all sort of made its way to you. But like, what were the two things that you think have given you the opportunity to get there without thinking about it as much?
So the consistency is the same thing. I think that's the biggest factor out of all of it. Is just obviously the goal has to work for the 100K, right? Like, so whatever you decide to be consistent with, the numbers have to work out to equal over 100K, which is what it is. But aside from that, you just being consistent is absolutely massive, and just doing the same thing day in, day out, and it will just pay off. Eventually, it will run over time. You'll go through ups and downs. You'll go through to things where you hate what eBay looks like, and you'll love what eBay looks like. Sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's not. You just kind of got to ride it out. But aside from that, because that's so much, genuinely so much of the pie is just made up by.
I'm gonna add another one in there, and I think you will agree with it actually. So one thing that I think is actually very, very, very important, and it's probably more important than consistency actually, which is something and it's something that people do not talk about enough, and it's surrounding yourself with people that are not negative. Because there is so much negativity in the community, like eBay is dead, eBay is this, eBay is that, and that sort of stuff. If if I have a rough day and I say to Benji, I've had an awful day, and he says, I had £1,000 day. Oh, well, it's something you did, or something, right? Do you know what I mean? And I actually think that one of the most important things I've done in my life, regardless of this as well, is surrounding myself with more positive people. Just putting people in there that are very much go-getters. They're all about winning and doing well. And then not only that, but they're like, oh yeah, you've smashed that. Just a little bit of reaffirmation. Word? Whatever that word is.
Reaffirmation word? I don't know.
Yeah. Like just having somebody, like one thing that I love massively is like just people that are randomly message you going, oh, you smashed that. And it's not necessarily like an ego thing. It's just oh yeah, do you know what? I have like Harry, I say this all the time. Harry has been so good for me just mentally, because I will say to him, today's been awful, this week's been awful. And he's like, zoom out, look at the bigger picture, be quiet, shut up. Your life is amazing compared to 99.9% of people. And I think just having people in your life that can give you that sort of balance of, because I've looked on Facebook pages before, right? And you see, eBay is shit, and then there's 70 messages underneath going, it's slow, I don't sell anything, I've sold 2 things this year. And then when you turn around to them and say, what have you selling? Oh, well, I'm selling some stuff around the house, I don't think it's going to sell. Then you're like, well, what
I
are
don't
you
agree.
complaining for? I know you might not agree. All right, go on, hit me with
it. You said it's bigger than consistency. I don't think it is, because you can get rid of. I'd say the fact how you said it was interesting, because you said not having negative people instead of having positive people. I think you could have no one. Like, you could just have no one. You could wipe everyone off, talk to no one, and just be like.
But then in that scenario, you're reliant on yourself, and if you are. There are people that are naturally more positive, and there are people that are I'm naturally more negative. Things that have played in my life have made me more naturally negative or disparaging towards things, right?
That's like playing your personality, though, because that's like, okay, that's like a whole different topic. But if you're looking at metrics that hit 100K, right? Like, you can be completely ghost mode by yourself out there grinding, and you will hit it. Like, you will hit it. You will make it regardless if you put the effort in. You don't need to talk to anyone realistically. It helps, and I love it. I love the community. We haven't really brought it up at all, but in terms of the group and text group, I love being in that group because of the community of it. I don't care about what 100% what value it's going to bring or whatever. I love speaking to people in there, and I love talking to people like that. And it's developed a community around me, which I really appreciate, because I like. Judging by the fact we started a podcast, I like chatting shit, and you also do, which is why we're here. But I love all that. But I think you don't need any of it. Like, realistically,
maybe I do. Maybe it's a situational thing. But I think having positive people around me has improved my. So I've spoken to you before about like the poor mindset, like being poor. And understand and that sort of process. So like I never used to have any money. So when I get money now, I throw it away because I don't want to have it, because I'm like, I shouldn't have money, right? And then just having the positive mindset of going, oh well, actually I can go from 100K to 200K. There's potential for that. So for me, I always think having positive people that can reaffirm your mindset to say, yes, you
I
can.
I'm not saying it's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing and it's not beneficial. I'm just saying, like, if you want to hit like notes as to how you get there, you don't need it. Like,
no, maybe not. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe I was looking at it from a selfish perspective and saying I needed it more than.
But you did say what had benefited you the most, which is
And I'm going to pull this one up because there's 2 people that have mentioned it quickly, which is Oki made a point about saturation in terms of reselling and potentially saturation in the market from a selling perspective, not just a buying perspective. And I would like to say that so if you are a part-time seller, there is a saturation, there is some sort of level of saturation, right? It's always going to be the way. But I think if you're a full-time seller, I think the saturation diminishes slightly the higher you go up in terms of how many you're selling and how much you're doing it. Because I think part-time sellers' knowledge is usually a little bit less, not always, but a little bit less than a full-timer. A full-timer should know more, right?
Jordan will slap you.
Yeah, no. And Jordan was the first person that entered my mind when I said, not like he is one of the exceptions to the rule. But what I would say is, I think
that's why you should put your returns away and not pile them up on top of your desk.
I think so my point being is that I think that there is a saturation to reselling, but I think there's a saturation to everything. And I think the better you get, the less the saturation affects you. And that's down to niching down into things that you can have more knowledge. I am supposed to be able to have more knowledge than a part-timer. Sometimes I fail. Jordan is probably way more knowledgeable than me on 90% of clothing than I am. And sometimes that will happen. But in general, I think that there's a lot more people now, even now, right? There is infinitely more people going around car boots right now, sourcing, than there was when I first started. But I still pick stuff up, and I pick up good stuff.
I think so. I think the other thing, right, is they'll weed themselves out. Like that. This is something I've said all the time, is that like you can give people all the tools to be successful, and they still won't do it. And if this is where consistency comes back in again. Is you can be consistent And if you just keep going and keep your head down and and keep moving in the right direction, people will fall off over and over again. People will start and who said it was just low cost entry? Simply reselling. It's a very, like I said, it's an easy thing to get into. It's simple. It makes sense. The model is straightforward. There's going to be loads and loads of people, but the better you get, the less competition there's going to be, and the higher you go, the more things you'll be able to deal with, the more deals you'll come across, the more people are going to work with you, the more relationships you'll build. And the market, that reselling has been a thing since the dawn of time. Like, it's like the simplest form of trade in the world. And it's like saying, oh, like, is there any point getting into being a farmer because there's so many farmers? Or like people, that's a stupid example, but people will always be buying stuff and selling stuff, and the market will get saturated. But then you just have, you could, if you're ahead of the market already, like if it's not saturated right now, and it is like there's like you said, plenty of part-timers doing little things here and there. But in terms of big players, there's not that many. There really isn't, especially in the eBay world.
Yeah, we're both part of the group that has got like some of the bigger players in the UK in there. And there, in terms of how many there isn't like huge amounts. And there will be people that obviously aren't in that group that are doing really, really, really well. But some of the ones in the group, they're doing it extremely well, and they're doing infinitely better than us. And if they're able to do infinitely better than, and also on top of just the scarcity mindset of it all, is that there are people like Xander's a perfect example. He runs a like a vintage company on a website. He's got a shop, like all these other things, like. And you can sell anywhere and everywhere. There's a place in my town that has got like a little old shop, and then he doesn't sell on eBay. Like, there's so many different ways to sell your items, but there's also so many different ways to buy your items. There's car boots, there's charity shops, there's private picks, there's Facebook marketplaces, there's Vinted. Like, there is wholesale. I know there's a couple of mentions of wholesale and stuff in there. It's not my bag, like in general, because wholesale can be
that's a different topic.
Yeah, low profit.
And we know you've had bad experiences in it.
Yeah. So
don't want to relive that.
No, absolutely not. So but my point is there is so many different ways of sourcing, and there's so many different ways of then selling those items. So theoretically, if you were to just sell on eBay, for instance, like you just specifically sell on eBay, and at some point you might think to yourself like, maybe it is getting saturated, but then you can just open up your vintage shop and start selling stuff on Vinted.
I have never thought that though, which is interesting, right? Like I've never looked at it, and even though there's loads of people selling the item, that I've never looked at it and gone, oh wow, there's lots of people selling this item, I'm not going to pick it up, or anything like that. There's the saturation is, again, you can do it better than everyone else. Like, even in a saturated market, like there's plenty of saturated markets. You just have to stand out better and do it better than other people. And yes, it might be harder. And I think Technology said this the other day about how I don't know what call it was in, but it's getting harder to earn the same amount of money. Yes. And it may have been easier before, but there's still a massive opportunity, and there's going to be more massive opportunities in the future. There's going to be different markets, and you don't know where any of it's going to take you realistically. You can end up in a whole different world, and you just started on eBay, and then, like you said, Xander's got his own shop and everything like that. And it becomes a whole different thing, and that you'll find a different niche, and you'll find a different way to apply your skills to something else. I think
that's very important. Actually, is the ability to pivot, and also, like you said there, you can apply a lot of the skills. 90% of the skills I've learned in the last 2 years of doing this, I haven't learned anywhere else. I've learned them here, and then there's 10% I've been able to bring from elsewhere. But then the skills that I've learned from this, if this did all go to Pete Tong, then guess what? I can apply those skills and maybe just pivot slightly and just work from a different niche in different environments and sell in different areers. Or you move to a different country and you do it somewhere else. Or there's so many vast, but there's so many different ways to buy and sell. And like you said, it's been going on for Tesco's is a reselling company, factually, Tesco's aren't worried about everything. Aren't worried about Aldi. I'm not worried about anybody but me, and I think that's the way you've got to look at it. And if it gets to the point where everybody's doing it, and a lot of people are, and it starts to become more difficult to make money out of doing it, then that's something you've just got to take what you can while you can, and just try and build up as much knowledge and information and skill sets as you can before it happens, and then you if you're smart, you'll make it work, and if you're not, you'll fail at the wayside. And that's just the way life is.
Yeah, same with everything.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's no limit.
Absolutely.
And there we go.
I think that's a good place to finish it off. I think
we're 10 minutes. We plan to make it an hour long. But we will get carried away with all sorts of things. To be honest with you, thanks to everyone that's commented. I know we've basically not answered. We haven't paid attention to half the comments of anyone that said, but genuinely appreciate everyone who's turned up and commented. To be honest with you, I don't know how it went. How do you feel like it went? Good.
I really enjoyed it. Again, it's one of those ones, like we said before, it's like we like talking, and we can talk for England, and I think we've done a good job of that. Hopefully somebody's taken some sort of interest, value, or something from it. And we will try, as we navigate the difficulties of trying to remember what we're doing and how we're doing it. We will be more involved in the chat and trying to. We are not professionals. We have never claimed to be, although the thumbnail might make it look like we're trying to be. But yeah, we absolutely appreciate everybody who shared it on Instagram, reposted, etc., joined, commented. If you've liked it, fantastic. All of those sorts of things. And I just want to say thank you to everybody. And hopefully next week we can try and get a little bit more into. I think because it was the first one,
you're going to put a topic down. You're gonna lay a topic down now.
Oh,
that's bold of you. I wouldn't.
No, maybe not. But I do think that yeah, because it was the first one, we wanted to get a lot of information initially out, and we wanted to just sort of get into it. And then as we move forward, we'll be able to answer a few more questions and do it. And we will be back next Monday, same time, and we will do it all over again. Yeah, and appreciate everybody who stopped by.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye. I think you just press end it now.
Play outro. Or do you want to play the outro?
Play the outro, man. Play the outro.